All right, can everybody hear me well? Probably. I can hear myself, so I think that's good.
All right. Am I coming in clear? Okay, cool.
All right, well, thanks for bearing with us with the technical difficulties, but we let somebody borrow the laptop earlier and the mouse may have fell out somewhere and we got a broken touchpad, so.
So it's Oleg's fault.
Yeah, it's our buddy Oleg here. It was his panel, so, which thank you for coming to our panel. We got our good buddy Oleg. He's a fellow YouTuber like us. His channel is Mr. Syntastic Presents, so check him out. He's a good guy, does some movie reviews and game pickups and all that stuff, so good guy. And we also have the wonderful, one and only Grimsy42 is here, checking out our panel, giving us the thumbs down, so he's doing what he's got to do, so, but yeah.
We also have Geeksmith Productions sitting in the back. We're shouting out to you guys. We've been on their podcast a couple times. Definitely check them out. Also, Slightly Livid Gaming sitting in the back. We didn't forget about you. Who else did we forget about?
And family and friends.
Family and friends, yes.
You
And you guys. So thank you for
for
being so patient and coming to see our panel. So this is the first panel I've ever done. I'm a little bit nervous.
Myself as well.
I'm going to joke about this because I have flashcards. That's going to help me through this panel. I know. That's you.
So a little bit about us, if you haven't heard of us before, we're just a local CNY couple. We're married, we've been married for 7 years, and yeah, 7, yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And gaming has been in the center of it, and last year, just a little bit before this time of year, we decided to do a YouTube channel for fun. You know, we didn't want to, like, you know, let's get really popular and try to make cool videos and stuff, you know, try to get like a video game nerd or something, but
also too, so he doesn't feel left out. This is Cameron over here. He's our nephew. He's gonna be our Vanna White.
He's our Vanna White for a few things
stuff that
we'll
we're talking about. So yay, Cameron.
And he makes cameos.
he makes cameos on our channel quite a bit. Cameron, who he's our cameraman a lot of times too. But he's got some of the games that we want to talk about from some of these companies and stuff. So we brought him along to be our little Vanna White, like Megan said. So basically, because our channel, we're collectors, like a lot of people here probably, and we catalog our trips to local game stores or far game stores. We traveled to Buffalo to visit Scott, and we've traveled to Albany to visit Oleg, and we even went like South Carolina to visit family. And while we're there, we always look for game stores, you know. That's kind of what our channel is, a mix of road trips. Not really game chasing per se. We kind of highlight the stores a little bit and talk about them, and then if we do find something, we talk about our pickups, and then just pickups videos every month, you know, showing what we got, and a few other random things.
Yeah, we do a couple playthroughs. We've done a couple Let's Not playthroughs with Slightly Livid there.
Yeah.
I think, what was the last one we played? It was like the
50 Cent.
That's the only one I did.
Blood on
Blood on
the
the
Sand.
Sand,
Yeah, that was a good time.
Instead of a let's play, it was a let's not. But and
so-
the game was all right. It's just there was enough about it that maybe
It was
wasn't my
playable.
favorite.
But so anyway, let's get started since we're a little late. You know, while we're out collecting games and going to game stores, there's a lot of times like we'll just pick up a game and we'll be like, oh man, that company's not around anymore. That's crazy. There were so many games. We used to always see this, you know. And it got us thinking that, you know, there's so many. We could talk about so many of them, you know, but we wanted to kind of highlight some of our favorites or ones that stick with us, or, you know, so we kind of chose a selection. There's so many more that we could choose from. Megan can attest to this. You know, there's some game companies that, you know, we almost can swear by, like, we know, like, you know, they tend to bring over games that we like from Japan, or they tend to publish the type of games we like. So now that we're collecting, a lot of times, you know, when you're not looking for the rare ones, you can get some of the, you know, cheaper ones that might be something akin to what you like, just if you are used to the type of stuff that some companies put out. Now, a lot of times companies, you know, they put out one thing that's totally different from something else, but a lot of times there are similar games that come out from companies. So with that, we'll get started. And
So let's get right into it. First company we're going to talk about is Midway. What's interesting about them is they started in around 1958. It was before they were called Midway. They were actually called Midway Manufacturing. And they did a lot of those, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, like...
An amusement
Amusement, yeah.
games
Like,
before
I think they
the
had, like,
video.
pinball machines and, like, probably, like, the...
Shootout type things, you know,
yeah.
you know, probably things that like are actually dangerous, like actual BBs and stuff. So
Yeah, so they started as early as that, and then in 1978, you know, their first like arcade machine
Oh yeah,
comes out. Yeah.
well, the first one, I'm putting Taito up here because the first game that they actually licensed in the arcade, which gave them their success, was Space Invaders.
Which is one of my favorite games. This was, well, basically, I mean, they did delve into video games before this, but this was the one that put the name Midway out there. They licensed Taito's Space Invaders, and it just like, that's one of my favorite, this is probably my favorite retro game pre-NES is Space Invaders, so I really wanted to, when we were thinking about Midway, what they put out, I'm like, you know what, they helped bring this out and introduce it to the masses over here in America. So that's kind of like where it began. And obviously with the arcade, that's kind of like where they were king. Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man were brought out. And you might hear us say they made this, and a lot of times it's they published a game or licensed it, and sometimes they actually did develop it, but we're just kind of talking about everything that's under these companies' umbrellas. So.
You stole the word right there.
The umbrella, yes.
So, Gauntlet series, classic arcade games, Rampage, of course, Mortal Kombat, which, changed the landscape of gaming with the foundation of the ESRB rating system. So all these games, NBA Jam, these are games that not only rocked the arcades, but had home ports. And we've probably, in this room, there's probably, everybody here has played at least one game by Midway. So to think that they're not here anymore is just kind of crazy. They fizzled out, some companies were sold and, mergers and acquisitions and stuff, and then now they're gone. Like Midway, this game that has been there since gaming's birth, is gone. So it's just something we thought was interesting to talk about. I wanted to talk about, this company, Sigmasys, I don't know how you pronounce it. First of all, the logo's awesome.
Yeah.
And who was it that did it?
I think it was Roger Dean, who also did album work. I still don't know about this sharing the microphone. Who also did album cover art for Yes and a bunch of other bands and stuff. So cool side tangent there.
But the reason we pointed them out, actually you can hang on a second, talk about it.
Yeah,
the reason we pointed them out is they eventually were purchased by Sony, became Studio Liverpool, who went on to make the fantastic Wipeout series, rest in peace for now, until somebody else within Sony's first party could put out a new one. But great games, awesome futuristic racers. But they put out this game, and Midway put it out for them, called Team Buddies. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because we collect games and they're hard, we look for the hard to find and the common ones. This is very uncommon. This is one of the, it had very limited release, didn't sell a lot of copies, so this is very expensive. This goes for what?
At
50
least
to 100?
50 to 100, exactly. And it plays very similar to a Worms type of game. Not necessarily in look, but as far as you got one team battling against another team.
Yep, and it's kind of got a strategy skew to it.
Strategy element to it. This is probably the most,
Yeah, this is the best comparison, but it's got a really charming art style, very simple. There wasn't very many textures or polygons.
Can you get rid of that thing up there?
I don't know how. If I had a
move the mouse, it won't go away?
Oh,
mouse is
mouse.
broken.
There you go. Oh!
It worked.
It up enough.
It worked
Awesome.
that one time.
The touchpads may not work to do what
You
we
guys
need
are
to
like
do,
our
but-
cheerleaders over there. Every time, hey, they turned the
Thank
computer
you.
on.
But thanks for bearing with us. So, but anyway, Team Buddies, we just wanted to mention because we haven't played it ourselves. We haven't found it. We're on the lookout for it. With a lot of collectible games, we could buy them on eBay, but we like the hunt of finding them out there. And sometimes, as you've seen from other people on YouTube and the internet, you can get good deals out there. So you don't have to jump on something just because it's rare and collectible. I mean, if you want to play it right away, go for it. But I think for something like Team Buddies, I never played it, don't really know too much about it, but now it's on my radar. And it happened to be something that Midway put out. So, next one I wanted to talk about, now Doom. Everybody's played Doom, and pretty much
But on every single system.
Yeah, and every port of Doom is usually a port of the PC version with stuff added or cut of either Doom 1 or 2, so you pretty much know what to expect. But I always liked Doom 64 back in the day, and Megan has played it more recently, and we both really like
very cool. This
its
is probably
style and its
version
feel.
I played the most of. Yeah, it's different than the other ones. I know they added some other puzzle elements to it. The graphics and stuff they made a little bit smoother and a little more blurred.
Yeah.
The music is different too, as well.
Instead of being the cheesy rock covers, it's actually its own atmospheric
sounding
soundtrack. So if you haven't played this Doom, this is a really cool offshoot for the Doom franchise because, one thing that's really cool about it is, all the enemies are all the same in all the ports of Doom, and they still have the same enemies in the game, but they actually redrew the sprites to be a different variation. So the enemies look different, even though you can identify who they are by the enemy. They're a little different, and the weapons too. You can see the chainsaw is like a double chainsaw. So just little cool touches like that. But definitely check it out if you like Doom style shooters, because it definitely plays like Doom. There's a lot of maze-like levels and stuff. But It's still a run and gun shooter, even though it has the slower stuff like
yeah.
Megan mentioned, and the puzzle. Like, you know, usually the puzzle is just find a key, find the door to go with the key. But there's a few like things that manipulate the levels and stuff. And I always thought it was really cool. It's a really, really unique game, and there's some really. And here it's a little dark and stuff. The game as a whole is dark, but I think it's got a lot of cool colors and stuff too. So, so we were like, yeah, let's, you know, Midway put it out. It's probably the most unique Doom game that's out there. So that's why I want to talk about it. Now, speaking of arcade games, earlier, San Francisco Rush made it home on the N64, and it's a bad racing game. I'm sorry, I don't think the racing's good, but it's fun. It's still fun, you know. I think the short exactly. You crash and then it explodes. And actually, did anybody here ever play race driving or hard driving back in the day? Like that game, it's really bad trying to go back to play it. But I used to play it with my nephew Zach all the time. We used to laugh when we would like.
This is his computer, by the way.
Yes,
so.
his but
He's not here, so we're gonna razz
But the you know, that game we used to love crashing. You could go off a ramp and it would explode. And then when I played this, I'm like familiar about this. And then I got Midway Arcade Classics Collection, and it had race driving, hard driving, and San Francisco Rush. But this was the home port, not the greatest, but Rush 2 is a pretty cool game. It's still not that great from a racing perspective, but the levels have a lot more variety. And Megan and I both really enjoy the stunt track. That was the thing that kind of set this one apart.
There was another part of the game, I'm lost.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but see, that was so strong. The two strongest things I think that stuck on my mind from this game was the stunt mode and picking up those Mountain Dew power-ups that would make the like, the filling a cup sound, you know. So I think this is a really cool, because it's not from the arcades, it's not a port. It's just really cool that they went a little extra mile. And if anybody's played the next Rush game after this, Rush 2049, they had like multiple stunt tracks in the home ports. 6 at least stunt tracks, very different ones, and they give you wings in that one, so you can actually control the flip. So yeah, you did. Yeah, but it's chaotic, and I think there's like a time limit, but you can like use a code to get like infinite time, and that's when me and Megan and a couple friends could just play, especially the sequel to this. Like you could just play that forever. So just wanted to talk about that because in talking about Midway, you know, we can talk about all the standard games like Mortal Kombat and stuff, but I just like a couple of these little extra. And this game's cheap. You can get it for no money at all at most, but maybe it's out there, I don't know. But good game. And then
Stranglehold, yeah. This game's awesome, and I played it around the time, like, I was a little behind when I played the Max Payne games, like, it was a couple years ago that I played through them, so I was, like, totally into, like, the bullet time aspect of it, and this game has that. It's also very cheap. You can get it for, like, a couple bucks.
Yeah, it's like $2 at most places. And it's not
it's
an
not the
amazing
greatest
game by any means, but
you know, if you have that Max Payne itch, it's pretty
and
similar.
it's pretty cool because especially in the beginning of the game, unfortunately it kind of wanes as the game plays on. But in the beginning,
Starts off strong.
there's little hints of, like, it says here, look for glints that indicate environmental exploits. So, you know, it's a John Woo game. It's a sequel to the movie Hard Boiled. So you have Chow Yun-fat as his same character from Hard Boiled, and with John Woo, you think of those iconic shootouts and stuff. So Max Payne is like a good framework for the type of gameplay to start. But this game went all out, and you could like shoot background elements. Like in this picture, you could see the like awnings falling and the stuff that was on it fell on the enemy, and that was just really cool. And unfortunately, like I said, it kind of wears away by the end of the game. There's not as much interactive stuff. So it's just pure shooter. But with the mix of that, bullet time, you can like if there's like a hand cart, like a you can like jump on your stomach and it'll slide. You can like shoot while riding that. So it's like it extends your bullet time more than just a dive. So pretty cool. I thought, you know, since we're out collecting the common as well as the rare games, this is one that you can get for $2, I'd say, and it's still worth a playthrough if you like the Max Payne style shooter. So. Definitely wanted to talk about that. I think it's a cool shot. You can slide down. I don't know how his hand isn't burning off, but sliding down that, you know, is it's just fun stuff like that. So by no means is it an A+ game, but it's worth the price you can get it for now for sure. And we want to talk about it. So. And then Midway made a lot of great games. They made a lot of missteps, but this was their game that was supposed to come out towards the end of their life. It was called This Is Vegas.
Yeah, it's got obviously from the screen cap, you can tell it's got a very like GTA.
It's trying to cash it on the
totally.
GTA.
It's funny too because we look at this picture, we see this one guy getting shoved in the pool. There's some girl like puking her brains out over there. I don't know what this crazy.
He's drinking what looks like
doing,
Tabasco sauce. Like,
yeah.
like, I don't know. So
it's
probably good that this game never came out, but we really liked Midway, and you know they they're one of the originals from back in the arcade era. You know, they were with gaming as it grew up and matured, and it's too bad that
2009 was,
yeah,
that was
that's
it
it
for
for them.
them.
So
How
what
many
the
years?
talent from there is dispersed so far now that they're still in the industry, I'm sure, but it's just weird when you go and you see all these games. I mean, even today I've seen a bunch of games by Midway, and I'm like, they're gone. So, but that's like the one bigger company that we wanted to talk about. We want to move into some of the more niche groups and stuff. So, Working Designs is one we want to talk about because well, first of all, if you see their logo, which is very iconic, when you see that on a game, you know that you're getting a game that's like, what would you say, like a Japanese?
A lot of their games, yeah, were JRPGs. First of all, Working Designs was an American company. They brought over a lot of JRPGs, different strategy games, shooters,
tactical
and stuff. So it was kind of nice because it like gapped that bridge between
Yeah, brought over.
U.S. and Japan.
I think one of the things that contributed to its demise is that it was doing that still as the Western games were becoming more popular. You know, like you look at nowadays, and actually even when like they started out, like PS1, PS2, like games like Siphon Filter and Metal Gear were getting people more into like military stuff. Although Metal Gear is still a very Japanese style of game, but you know, then moving into PS2 era and now modern systems, you know, like Call of Duty and stuff, really moved to a Western philosophy. Even RPG started to go more for like open world, Skyrim. Well, even like I'd say starting around like Morrowind, and when PC games started coming over to consoles more and getting ports, RPGs changed too, and the JRPG did. You know, it's not like it was back then. So Working Designs, I think we both would probably compare them most if you see like Atlas, Nipponichi Software,
yeah.
or Xe.
Yeah, I always mispronounce it. I don't
It's
know
okay.
why. But yeah, those games are very similar as far as the type of games and also like their special editions.
Yes, like the way
and
they
the
put
stuff
their
they include, the
packaging
stuff
together.
they put it together.
So we'll go through a little brief history of Working Designs. I just want to show because like in America they really first showed up on the TurboGrafx 16, and this is Parasol Stars, which is
a bubble bot. Yeah.
bubble
I
game.
love how you stopped. We were like finishing.
I knew. Yeah. We've been married 7 years. Yep. So this, like, you know, you started to see, you see the little logo on there. But then around the Sega CD time, you started to see the immensely popular Lunar series. And you know, I like to point out the Sega CD games by Working Designs because Sega CD, in my opinion, it's not a great system, but it gets a bad rap. If you ignore all the games that people remember it by, like the full motion video games and stuff, there's some awesome exclusives for it. Like, and Working Designs was some of the companies that really brought out that were Working Designs. And with the 2 Lunar games, it's another RPG called Vey, which isn't as revered, but it's like a $40 to $60 game depending on where you can find it online or in stores. But it's a pretty cool game, and they all have this.
Oh yeah,
hollow
it's like
foil.
I don't know. You can definitely tell it's a Working Designs game because a lot of them have this like shiny, like text, like shiny foil that they include, like you know.
Yeah,
They can't really tell from these pictures, but like. You know, the Lunar has like shiny gold stuff around it, and the print on the back where it describes the game and stuff is shiny print. And it's all, you know, they use a lot of like holographic imaging and stuff. So that's another way to kind of pick out Working Designs.
Yeah, it's got an iconic look. And what I like is sometimes they would put the genre, like you see these all say RPG in the corner. Not every Working Designs game says this, but they pointed it out. And like on this, Popful Mail is a really cool Sega CD game I'm looking for right now, actually. And it's a side scroller with like RPG elements, so it's kind of like an action RPG, and they actually put action RPG in it. So really cool that they bring over these types of games. Like you don't see these types of games just coming out for, you know, the American systems, especially you know in this time and on the Sega system. You know, usually these Japanese RPGs and stuff came out on like Super Nintendo and stuff, and that's what we remember playing the great RPGs. But there were some good ones on some of the Sega systems like this. So, and then Saturn. Now this is when you see some of their strong. Yeah, I wanted to show this game because Megan and I both love their translation,
Yes,
their localization.
they were phenomenal. Not only is their sprite work incredible,
Yes.
but a lot, you know, their games kind of did a really good job of the English translation. Like there wasn't like some of the stuff you see in games. There's kind of that.
There's like mistakes in English.
You know, things
all your
kind of
base
not the right
belong to us
words.
kind of things.
But they not only were they fantastic at translating, they also their humor was really
Yeah, the writing is spot on in it.
exactly.
And it reminds me, if anybody's played like the Mario RPG, Paper Mario, Mario and Luigi games, they have fantastic writing too, and the translation, and even like Earthbound and stuff, like games that took like these very Japanese games, but just gave them such a great translation and care in the dialogue and stuff. So you see that in games like this. But the Saturn definitely had a lot of great classics. Actually, Dragon Force, which Vanna White over here is going to show, he's got a copy of the game right here. That's a fantastic strategy RPG where you have like legions of armies that you fight against each other, and it's just unlike anything else. It's really cool strategy game. And I wanted to point out, Megan mentioned earlier that they have cool special editions, but a lot of times they also had variants of the disc artwork.
Yeah.
And
which can get very expensive.
this
if
one
you're a
here
collector
that
and you wanna
the
get
lovely
them all.
Vanna has is actually the rarer variant of it, which has the red dragon on it. But you
Yeah.
see there's 4 here. I used to have the one at the top right that said the disc only, and I want to get it complete, so I ended up selling it. But they're all, it's vibrant, colorful. Nothing feels like a cheap disc with like, one color print on it. I mean, they always put care in it.
Everything, honestly, that Working Designs put out, I mean, even just the case like this, between the disc variants, they had full color, manuals, which at the time, not a lot of games, were doing that.
Now we
And also like crazy special editions, which, we'll show you
We'll
a
show
little
some
bit.
of
We
those
have
too.
some examples.
One cool game that came out for the Saturn was actually Sega Ages, which in Japan they have plenty of these games. Sega Ages brings out like ports of arcade classics and even like unreleased versions or like upgraded versions. In a lot of cases, they're actually downgrades because they're not as good as the original arcade ones, but or like console games that they ported. But there wasn't too many. I think there was like 2 Sega Ages games. This one and one for PS2 that came out over here. I may be wrong, but as you can see, it says arcade on there. This has holofoil to it as well, and the parts like the Saturn logo and the disc on there. But it was cool because it's a port of.
Can I tell a small story about this game?
Feel free. Do you want the microphone, Mr. Guest, or can you shout?
No, I talk loud. So, I know Saturn very well, not as good as some of the Sega fanboys, but I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Game Chasers. I was in Texas game hunting with them, and this was at a flea market for $6. It's about a $80 game, if I'm not mistaken. And being the nice guy that I am, I told somebody who was looking at it that it was rare and expensive that had no idea, and then regretted it afterwards because he bought it and I don't have it and he does. Anytime you see Working Designs, it's all gold, it's all valuable, buy it. If it's a fair price, get it. They're all collectible.
So I thought it was cool that they did a port of these arcades. I mean, it has Space Harrier 2, Afterburner 2, and Outrun on it, and they're arcade-perfect ports, which with Saturn, if anybody here has played Saturn, you probably know that it was a master of 2D, a little weak at 3D, but the 2D games, you can't beat it. So just interesting because it's not an RPG, but I'm glad they put it out there. And then their very last game for Sega Saturn was Magic Knight Ray Earth, which is the one Cameron has to bring with us, or with him. But it's a unique game. It's like an action RPG. It kind of plays like a Zelda, but a little more RPG elements to it. But I think it's based off of an anime.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Ray Earth's
Which-
an awesome anime.
Is it an awesome?
Really
See, it's an
good
awesome
old-school
anime. So yeah, and it does, and the artwork in a lot of Working Designs games has like this a very classic anime look, and so I could tell from this, I'm like, this looks like an older classic anime, that it was from. So thanks for confirming that. But it's a really cool game, but unfortunately that was the very last Sega Saturn game, and so thus the last game by Working Designs. But they moved on to the PlayStation.
They did. They moved on to a Wonder, which also plays, I believe, like a Zelda.
Yeah, they're even more like Zelda than Magic Knight Ray Earth, actually.
So, yeah, again, phenomenal sprite work. I mean, just the detail in it. I mean, we're not called sprite lovers.
Sprite lovers, swallow this
No
shit.
reason, but I mean, it's just very impressive. I mean, look at the wood.
Yeah, it's just, I love 32-bit 2D games because you get the, you used to have to get like a 800 plus Neo Geo back in the day to get, these types of sprites, and in 32-bit it was like nothing. So, and nowadays, of course, too, we have great 2D games. But this game was really cool, and it gave PlayStation owners a little bit of RPG elements in it as well, so they didn't go too far. Now, this is a very unique game. I always enjoyed this game, even though I didn't have a gun for a while to play with, and the reason I mentioned gun is it's actually a light gun game, and I couldn't find too many good pictures on the internet of it, but I guess I could describe
I
it
think
as...
it looks a lot like Panther.
It's like Panzer Dragoon, or maybe like the Eco and Shadow of the Colossus games type of aesthetic with sprite-based enemies and RPG elements. So you like level up, you get experience and stuff. So very unique, has anime cutscenes and a wacky story and stuff. So really cool art style, and it doesn't come across in the pictures very well, but it's definitely unique in the way it looks and plays. And so that's a very different one too that they brought out. The reason I'm showing the Lunar again is because this is actually one of the ones that came out for PlayStation. These are like kind of like the definitive editions.
You gotta hold it up and show it. You want me to? Help.
Well, anyway, while I'm figuring out why this is red.
Oh no.
Yes. So yeah.
No.
Just shut up.
Brandon.
Faded.
All right.
Man.
We're gonna show you guys
Faded.
this
You know
stuff.
why it was faded?
Yeah. This is a great example, like I was saying, of the limited editions, the kind of work that they went into it. But music, CD, hardcover guide. I took over as Vanna. You're my co-Vanna. But yeah, there's shiny stuff on the side too. But I know. It still smells good.
Yeah, this one's, if you ever get a collector's edition of it, well, standard really, you'll most likely not find the pendant in there, but if you do, you're lucky. So.
I first encountered it on eBay. There was an auction for like $50. I had enough money to buy it, but I thought, it's going to go up to like maybe 80 or 100 or whatever. So I didn't buy it, and guess what the final bid was? $47.
Oh, it sucks.
Then I saw a copy at a thrift store for like a couple of bucks. I opened it up, no discs in it. Yeah.
It's eluding you.
Yeah, and then I bought the version of it for the PSP. Went home, put it in my PSP. PSP was broken.
You just can't win with that game.
I had to buy a new PSP. It took me a year. At that point, I decided, screw it. I'm eventually going to sit down and play it,
But you had to play for that game, right?
I hope it better be worth it.
I know, it's the second one. Who knows? Maybe it's not as good as the first. But thank you for All right, so we're back. And the plugs are in tight.
Thank you, Brandon.
So yeah, thank you, Cameron, for showing off your collector's edition. So moving on, they also brought over some good shooters. Raystorm is a really cool shooter. I think it's in a series of shooters because the ship design is very iconic. It looks kind of like played Galactic Attack, which has I can't remember the name of it. Layer Section, I think, is the Japanese title. It's for the Sega Saturn. The similar ship design, I think it's in the same series of that. But really cool game. It has, if you've ever played like a Panzer Dragoons 3D shooter, like you can shoot enemies and you can lock onto them and then shoot a bunch of ones. It kind of does that in a two-dimensional, well, it's got 3D graphics, but it's on a 2D plane kind of game. What's that? And it's on Xbox Live in HD, so yes, definitely get that. But they brought that to the PlayStation, and Thunder Force is a classic shooter series, and this one's not as good as the old ones, but it's still solid. And they brought it out over here, and it's cool because the PlayStation, as you can see, had a lot of variation in their working design games. So. And then on the PS2. Now this is probably the cheapest working designs game you can
And
get.
that's the thing, I was going to correct you earlier because you're like, oh, every game's collectible and it's expensive and stuff. This is still collectible. This you could probably find, what, like $10?
$5.
No, not
Yeah.
$5, $10, like,
Yeah, I
you
see
know.
it $4.99.
This is a great starting point if you're looking to start working.
If you like shooting
design.
ones. Yep,
Yeah.
which isn't the one, yep.
Those
They're the
don't
two
count
cheap
to
ones.
me. There's
But-
nothing special about it.
But Sylphy is actually a very solid shooter. Treasure worked on it, and Treasure, they made like Radiant Silver Gun, which this is no Radiant Silver Gun, but and Ikaruga, they've made some really good shooters. So just interesting that they put that out. And then the last game that Working Designs put out was for PS2. It was Grow Lancer Generations. There was 2 or 3 Grow Lancer games in it. 3 Japanese in this series, Japanese RPGs, strategy RPGs, and you can tell from this picture, but also from Cameron's actual one he has here. It came with a lot of stuff. It had a watch. It had I don't know, what's in that pouch? Is that holding something?
A lot of stuff.
It's
a ring on a necklace.
Ring, and a necklace, and it's got the nice little pouch for it. Playing cards, soundtrack, and unfortunately, that's probably one of the major things that led to their demise.
Yeah.
They spent so much money on these, and nobody would buy. I mean, they didn't even release regular versions to make, just a cost if people wanted to play the game. They had these big versions. And you see companies like those ones we mentioned earlier, Atlas, Xseed, Nippon Ichi Software, they'll bring over these big collections, but they have a standard version most of the time too.
I really think like Working Designs is ahead of its time, this kind of stuff, because now I think people would totally eat this stuff up. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome having all that extra stuff in there, and yeah, it's sad if
Yeah, like,
they
look
were
at this stuff,
kind of
like-
a few years behind. But then who knows? Maybe if Working Designs had come first, would Xseed
What other
and Atlas.
companies been really pushing,
So-
maybe they're filling that void, so who knows? But definitely wanted to talk about Working Designs because we have a strong spot in our heart for them. So, No, Megan, you have the flashcards from last one, right? She was the 3 people.
Oh, yeah.
So,
All right, so
so these 3, these are all Capcom employees back in the NES.
yes.
Shinanichi Yoshimoto, I might be pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah.
Akira Kitamura, and Koichi Yotsui. They wanted to leave Capcom and make their own company, which was called Takeru. And if nobody's heard of this, I guarantee you at least heard of the game. This was another Taito game, another company I mentioned earlier who's no longer around. And that is Little Samson, the
Yes.
super collectible one, which I know at least one person
never-
here has
Scott's
a
never-
copy or 2 of it. I
Scott's
mean,
never-
yeah,
Oh, really?
probably- yeah, I know, yeah, 2, because you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I don't want it. I like money.
I know, but I like
We don't have
games, but I don't have the money. Well, what's cool about this game is, there's other NES games that people have heard of as well that are super collectible. Flintstones, Taito put that one out too. Flintstones, Surprise at Dinosaur Pete.
Also,
Panic Restaurant, Taito put out. And Panic Restaurant's a pretty good game too. But Little Samson is just a fantastic game.
This is one of those games that, I mean, not that I have the money to drop down for it, but I feel like if I did, like, I'd actually enjoy the game. I'd actually,
You're not just
it's very
buying
strong.
full, it's collectibility.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, the sprite works in color in this game. I mean, it was a late one. It came out in, 92?
1992, and that Super Nintendo was already out at that point.
But just the variation in these pictures and stuff, you can really see. And I did play it through a friend's
Oh,
emulator before.
and something that's really cool about this game too, they didn't have like any text, like everything was done through cutscenes.
With
That's how the story was.
Yeah, dialogue. It was just
dialogue.
visual. Yeah, it was really cool. And you play as 4 different characters. There's a dragon. Little Samson, actually right here, you see Little Samson. The mouse is kind of blending in the background, but there's a little mouse. And the big rock guy. And they all play a little differently, but the game itself plays kind of like a Mega Man-ish game with well, actually, the guys who worked on, what games did they work on? We have,
Yeah. Like Ghost.
yeah,
Mega Man,
Ghost,
Ghost and Goblins.
Mega Man, yeah.
Goes
Ghost
on, and
Mouse.
Strider. I can't remember which of the developers were for which one,
Yeah.
but they you can
They all
definitely tell the
worked on
Strider
very
influence because
strong.
they there's like wall climbing and stuff. Really cool, great game. If you do ever get a chance to play, even if it is through an emulator, I guarantee you can enjoy it because I loved it. And look at that boss sprite. That is boss. That is boss. And just like I said, the colors. I mean, it could pass for an early 16-bit game.
What's
really good.
pretty cool about them too, because they made a few other games that just didn't come over
Yeah, they were
the
Japanese.
United States. Yeah, they were Japanese only. One of them was called Kokoram, I think, and it played. It was another platformer. I don't think we have any other pictures.
No,
of
I
it.
just wanted to talk about it.
And that was on the Famicom. Another game that they came out with was Nostalgia 1907.
Nostalgia 1907, which
And that
is
was like a text
graphic adventure kind of
like
thing.
graphic, yeah. Again, only in Japan.
And the guy who did the artwork for the bosses in this and for that game that never came out over here, he was like a famous artist for like Japanese manga and stuff. So definitely shows in the polish of the game. So great game. Too bad that for people to play it, they either have to play it illegally or spend a lot of money. I wish it would come on like the virtual console or something. But Little Samson will be remembered by hardcore collectors, and I just wanted, if anybody hasn't heard of it, which you probably all have heard of it, but if you haven't, it's a really cool game, and we wanted to, that we talked about Midway as like a big company that was around forever and now no longer is there. This is a company that just made one game in America and is gone, but look at the legacy it has now, so. And now we're going to talk about Tokuro Fujiwara. Now he worked on Capcom again. He worked on Ghosts and Goblins, Mega Man 1 and 2, I believe, the arcade version of Bionic Commando.
Yeah, I think he helped produce like the first Resident Evil. So again, like a really strong
Oh,
background.
I put that in there for you, Scott, because I know. I know you have. Yes, I know you have a complete box.
$42 I want.
So yeah, and then like Megan mentioned,
Yeah.
Resident Evil.
He worked with Capcom for about 13 years before he left the company to start his own company, which is known as Whoopie Camp. Very silly name, yeah.
But Whoopie Camp only released, well, 2 games in America, but 1 series, and that is Tomba. So, if you haven't heard of Tomba, it is a side-scrolling, 2.5-dimensional game with a lot of sprites, but there are some polygons in it as well. And
Just
it's
some RPG elements to it
a lot of
too.
RPG elements.
Towns and
Yep,
stuff
you can talk
go
to
to and
people.
get quests from.
Yeah, what's interesting is as you're playing, it plays like a platform and stuff, but there's not like just stages. It's kind of like an open world, maybe a little bit of like a Zelda, Metroid type feel to it. But as you're playing, like right here, if you investigated this box and this mission popped up and it shows you the score you'll get for completing it, or that might have been him completing it because I'm seeing this total score up there. But it was really cool because as you're playing this game, like there's quests that pop up, and you have a journal. So again, kind of like the RPG elements of it are like you have an inventory with equipment that you can get and upgrade, kind of like a Zelda 2. And then you also get these quests, and you keep them in a log. And there's quests you get in the beginning that you get an item later on. You're like, that could get me up to that jump I couldn't reach, or that enemy I couldn't get. And it's got a lot of charm. It's got a lot of humor. There's these flowers that look like butts. I don't think they're in any. But when you jump, but they kind of like Zelda. They'll give you like hints or story elements and highlighted text as you're playing, just to point out some of the stuff you're doing. There's even like towns, from like a top view perspective. So it's really cool to learn more of the story as you're playing. And it's not like an award-winning story. I mean, it's just fun, good
very
platform.
charming, game.
And a lot of times, I'd say like PS1 games, obviously the early 3D doesn't hold up a lot of times, but this game, kind of like games like Klonoa, if you've ever heard of that game, they use sprite-based graphics on these mix of sprites and polygons and achieve a really nice effect that looks good. But that being said, they did make Tomba 2. Tomba 1 never made like a greatest hits. They didn't release that many, unfortunately, when it came out. I think it would have sold because it reviewed very well. Because you feel the influence of a lot of those older Capcom games that made it into this. And but Tomba 2 did come out, and we were looking for this game for a while.
Yeah.
And actually, this guy right here
This guy hooked us up.
hooked us up with it, and we made a little trade.
This game plays very similar to the first one, except it adds the whole 3D element. So it's still kind of like a 2D, like sort of.
Yeah,
like,
the gameplay is
kind
still
of thing.
2D.
Yeah, but you can obviously like see in the back of 3D. And
Yeah,
stuff,
like each of these little areas in the back, like you can reach a junction point, probably where that little thing is right there, where arrows will show up, and if you press up, it'll like face that, and then it'll be 2D on that plane. So it really had a lot of depth. And unlike most PS1 games, I actually think this game looked even better fully 3D. There's not too many PS1 games that hold up with great fully 3D graphics, but this game's just extremely colorful.
Oh, this is cool too. They added like these little like outfits and stuff that would give you different powers, which is kind of cool because it reminds me of like Mario.
Exactly. He's got a flying squirrel suit here.
And also too, this game has such a variety of environments. Like here it's all grassy and happy, and the previous slide,
Yeah,
icy.
like
Previous
you look at
one
like
are,
definitely the variety in this
depths
game.
of hell right there.
Yep. It was a great game, and like each of these little seesaw things in the background, they were those points where you kind of go into the background, and then once you walk down there, then there was another plane back there. So just really creative, and like I said, it's kind of one open world where like you can go back to the starting area. This is the starting area. Actually, but you can go back there with stuff you learn later on. So there's some backtracking, but it's more of like a Metroid or Zelda style backtracking than like a, all right, I beat all the bosses, now I got to go backwards and fight them all again. It's just kind of more the annoying type of backtracking. And but great game. Tomba 1 is available on the PlayStation Network for like $5, so it's a good cheap way
But
to
it
get
is
it.
like Japanese.
The first one is actually English, but Tomba 2 they only have Japanese one on PlayStation Network, unfortunately. So
Yeah, and it's
kind
kind
of
of
a bummer.
expensive to find these on eBay, but if you get lucky.
Yeah, I mean they're not like 100 plus or anything, but they're like between 40 and 60 depending on the seller, and they're very hard to find in the lot, just out and about. So, but if you actually want the show, before Oleg hooked us up with a great copy, we did have the game. I got it for $10 disc only, but as you can see, it didn't have the artwork. The one on the left and the one on top down there, it didn't have the artwork. I drew the logo on it when I was a kid. Or
We actually brought this because it's funny.
Yeah, and one of the
It's
things
a show
that annoys
about
collectors like us is when Blockbuster put these rental things on there that if you took off would leave a big scar. So it's almost like a
But it plays.
a Blockbuster brand that's on your games. But it plays, and we
Come on, look at that stellar art.
we now have it, but the game's still good. So
Make
at the end, actually, if anybody thought those Tomba games were pretty cool, we're never gonna sell this. It's not gonna.
We want to
get us
gift
any
it
money.
to one of you.
So
lucky
we brought some
folks.
raffle tickets, and we brought
We brought a bowl.
little
Fish
fishbowl thing. So we'll do a free raffle if anybody wants to try to do
Yeah,
it.
like I
We'll-
said, it's playable. It's not in prettiest condition.
But it plays, and it's a great game. So
And Nate Grant's artwork is pretty
my
amazing.
artwork is worth it. So.
So hey, if you're interested in playing this game, we're raffling.
Yeah,
it,
anybody
so
want to?
We don't want it anymore.
It's a free raffle though, so you just write your name, or put your number in, and we'll draw it at the end. So, and then we could spend time talking about so many different companies, but we just went through and put a couple names, whether ones that you see everywhere or or just like one-offs like these companies that came and went. So we're just gonna go through it. We were gonna try to do something sappy and put like I will remember.
We didn't have time.
or something like that. But so I'll just go through. Atari. There's elements of Atari. There's other companies of Atari, but Atari was, huge. And we all know what happened with Atari in the 80s and, the crash of the video game industry and stuff.
Your Atari shirt there.
But my dad's representing the Atari with his shirt. Yeah, show it off. Yeah. So he remembers. He didn't forget. And Hudson, I didn't even realize until recently,
They
like,
shut
Bomberman
a
is
couple years ago?
2012 or
Yeah,
10.
it's
I was
really
like, what?
recent.
And I love the Bomberman games, so I'm hoping somebody else can get that license and keep Bomberman games going because those are really fun. But, NES, so many games on the NES with the Hudson logo. It's like, oh my gosh, I used to play this growing up, so that's crazy. Factor 5. Did anybody love the Rogue Squadron games for Nintendo 64? And the one for GameCube, Rogue Leader, was phenomenal. So that was just, that was a major hit when they were gone. Because I don't know if did anybody see the Rogue Squadron that was supposed to come out for Wii that they just recently got some footage? Yeah, it looked great. It looked better graphics than any Wii game that ever came out. And unfortunately, their last game was Lair. If you guys ever played that, it was played like a flight sim action game, but it was with dragons. And actually, I got it for like $2 now. And when I played it now, I was like, it's okay. And it's because they patched it actual controls instead of the bad PS3 motion controls. So now I played it and I'm like, oh, this is alright for $2. But it's too bad to see that that's what killed them. And it was hyped. I remember Sony was banking on that game. It's got dragons, people. That was the thing to sell it. But and then Acclaim. I wanted to really go in more depth with them. We just didn't have time because they didn't make too many great games or bring out too many great games, but we all played crappy licensed games growing up based off of every license from movies to shows. I mean, actually, they acquired LJN, which, and the video game nerd likes to point out a lot of the bad LJN games, but we all played them, that's the thing. And so they're gone. I mean, but I looked through my collection, I'm like, there are a lot of games that I claim, from my childhood and stuff. Argonaut, they've been absorbed and split around, but that's just another company that, Star Fox and, those old games like that they put out, it's crazy to think they're not out. Bizarre Creations, anybody know who these guys are? They did the Project Gotham Racing series, and before that, Metropolis Street Racer that was on Dreamcast. And they did Blur, right? That you just got it, yeah. And Blur is a fantastic Xbox 360 and PS3 racing game. It's kind of like a Mario Kart type gameplay, but with real cars and Burnout. Yeah, it's got like a neon to it. It looks really cool. So. I thought they were worth talking about. Now, you guys played Shadowrun? Anybody played either of the Shadowruns or the actual, RPG game, tabletop RPG like that? This is a little more of an obscure company, but we thought, hey, why not throw them in there too? So. And then THQ, another one that just published so many, especially recently. I felt like that last gen they made a lot of good games and they were really trying hard. And it was like. I know, Darksiders, yeah. And I'm moving to the last thing because we're running over. LucasArts. That was a big hit for me because from their point-and-click adventures to their Star Wars games, they had a lot of influence in this industry. So,
it's crazy to think they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone. But that's it. We just, there's so many we could choose from, and thank you for bearing with our technical issues.
Yeah.
And sorry for running over a little bit, guys. We're done now, but thank you so much for coming by. And and thanks, Cameron, for bringing some of your visions to the show. So.
Yeah, Cameron!
Yeah, Vanna. All right, thanks everyone.